See no further public comment, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time and entertain some questions from council. I do have a number of questions. Officer Lee, are you still back there? Sorry, Officer Fails. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of somebody else. Been that kind of a day. Officer Fails. Actually, it should be Sergeant Fails. I apologize, sir. Ms. Hunt, you have some comment?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to mention this. Officer Fails is coming up and he can speak to it. As staff was working on this ordinance, he actually, with other police officers, went out and tested around town with the meter decibels. So he can speak to that for council as well. And that was considered when we wrote it.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt. Sergeant Fails?
Yes, sir.
Why don't you go ahead and just give us a brief overview of what you've done?
Well, we went through a lot of research and stuff looking for the right kind of meter to meet our needs. I spent a lot of hours working and trying to figure out what was the best one and checking a lot of them. I demoed quite a few. Came up with this one. It seems to be more attuned to what the code enforcement and that kind of activity, which is what we were looking for. It gives the averages for the base and the A weighting and the C weighting, which are the scales that we're going to use to control those two variances. And we have addressed the issues of base and versus. A weighting frequency is basically our hearing, or the hearing and stuff that we use, and C weighting frequency it gives us the best. There's a lot of ways to do it, but the C weighting frequency gives us that rumble or the bass kind of thing that we can measure also. So that's why in that table there's two sets of DVAs, or DVA and DVC.
So Sergeant, I'm going to stop you for just 1 second just to make sure. The table 2 then would be the base, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I think table 8.
I'm just looking at page 8. Table 2 is the maximum sound level C weight average. You're saying C weight is the base, so that is addressed in this ordinance, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
All right, go ahead. Continue.
I did go around town. I did do a lot of readings. I did spend a lot of time doing that, making sure that I covered different areas in town, taking averages. I got different stereos and played those and used those as testing, and I brought in extra people, so it wasn't just me. I had all people from our legal department. We had people from the department, other people just that I grabbed and got opinions from, and showed them the variances or the distances and the sound levels from those stereos and from that type of noise. I went into different kinds of music. I got some music has, as you're aware, much more bass than other music. I used different kinds of music. I tried everything I could think of to try to make sure that I covered everything I could do to find a good, happy medium for us. And that's what I believe I've done.
Thank you, Sergeant. Mr. Barton, there was a question, if we had spoken at tech review, a couple of people had some questions. I believe I asked you to address some of those questions about the C weighting and things like that. Is that correct? Were we able to talk to some of those people that had those questions?
At this point, no. I did speak to a couple of people, but we really didn't come to any conclusion.
Okay. Any further questions from council? Councilman Hafen.
There were some questions from the public, maybe whoever, I don't care who addresses them. I think we've talked about the baseline noise in the chart. That's the second table that we talked about.
Yes.
The different levels. Not going to pay the fine was one of the other questions. I think Gene Johnson asked that. But can we enlighten the public on that?
There is a fine, I believe, in the end of there. I think it's $250. And if you don't pay our fines, we take you to jail. So,
Pay your fines, please. The other one is the permit. Who decides the variances, those kind of things? Hypothetically, I come in and I'm going to have one that I'm gonna have motorcycles, horses, cows, dogs. I mean, I'm gonna make a lot of noise. Who's gonna determine what my variance level is gonna be, and who's gonna determine how loud, what times, those kind of things?
Animals are actually addressed into a different ordinance, but if you're going to have an event, there is an application process that's outlined in the ordinance. The ordinance, that application will be reviewed by the noise control administrator. And the noise control administrator will then either grant that variance or deny it, depending on the application and the requirements therein.
Ms. Hunt, you have a comment?
Thank you. To answer that question further, Councilman Heapen, 5-1-3-10 has very strict standards that the NCA will look at, which is the noise control administrator, in granting those variances. And whatever variances are granted, then the person who got the permit will be expected to follow those. If they don't, then they will be cited.
Okay, so,
Or warned and given a chance to correct it right then, or otherwise they'll be cited.
so they come in and get a variance. Prior to that, I assume you're gonna be the noise control administrator, is that right, Sergeant?
That's my understanding.
Is the chief good with that?
Well, it's his
So
choice.
you're the man that's gonna determine a lot of the issues.
I'm going to do my best, yes.
You know, I appreciate the comments and the concerns and the questions from everyone. You know, they were told that, well, we can't enforce it. And I will say that there were a number of people that went down there during those, and there was contact made with the Casablanca to try to get this thing under control. And I think for the most part it happened. I agree that we need to control the crude talk and some of that trash. We are trying to do something that's reasonable for everyone. You know, whether that's, you want to believe that or not, that there's been a lot of time spent on this. We have a machine to, you know, record the levels. Just for kicks, what, you said in the back and that was on.
Yes.
What's been the average level? What am I at right now? Will it read it right now?
I did, yeah.
What am I at, Sergeant?
I actually pushed it down so I could get the averages for you so that you could hear. We are in violation. I took every 10 to 12 minutes from that back corner back there, which I kind of thought would be more of the quietest part of the room. Every one of them was above. 71 was the first average I took. 67 point something was the second. And the last one is 74. So I hate to take the blunt of this, but I did pick those first set of DBs that are set in there. And I did that with a lot of thought and intent, trying to make it fair for everyone, because average speech, us just talking, having a conversation is going to be an average of 65 decibels, which is what the limit has been changed to. And not that that's too high, too low, that's not for me to decide. I made my suggestion on all the effort that I put into doing the sound readings, and I used different meters. It wasn't just one. These are calibrated meters. They're all within minute differences of each other. So there was a lot of effort put into that, and thought of business and personal activity and all sorts of things.
One last question. I want to make the statement that we're not passing the buck on to Sergeant Bales. We're going to take responsibility, the mayor and council, so if there's a problem, let us know. However, we are trying to do our best to get something that works for everyone. But I want a hypothetical here. Casapalooza goes on. You get a call, it's going on right now, you get a call, you go down and you take the machine. Just tell me the process so that people can understand what would happen, since you are the NCA.
Okay, well that's outlined actually in
I know it is, but I want you to just just tell them.
the affected person would call, who is our complainant, would call. One of the officers would go there, would use this machine and set it up. We have it's goes on a tripod. You set it up, it has to be, a couple feet off the ground. You got to make sure, you've got to investigate the area, make sure you haven't got a barking dog next door, obviously, or somebody beating on a pot to affect the reading. things like that. You know, you've got to do all the things you can do to eliminate those outside effects. Then you will go to that person's property line, which is closest to the noise source. You would let it take a 5-minute average. And a 5-minute average would be, so you set the machine up and you basically got to keep people away from it and whatever for that 5 minutes to allow it to get those averages so that it's a fair reading. It's on a slow meter response, so a car drives by or whatever, that's not going to kill you, but it is going to take an average. So once there's a lot of other little steps inside there, but once you take that reading, you'll take that average, and that's what you will go off of. There'll be a couple of averages. One will be a C-weighted average, and the other one will be an A-weighted average. And if it exceeds either one of those scales, table 1 or table 2, if it exceeds either one, then it would be a violation. Our first intent would be to try to get that immediately fixed. If it could be immediately fixed, then we would try to do that, a warning or whatever you want to call it. We would try to immediately remedy the problem. If we can't do that, then we would, or it was a refusal, then we would take, our enforcement action.
I just want to thank the PD, the staff. I want to thank the citizen input. All we're trying to do is something that we can all live in peace and harmony.